Good morning and happy Monday. Ah, we have had some pretty lovely movement in the market. I'm personally excited to see where the day can take us. Now, before we get into like our standard levels, there's two things I want to look at, right? Because our government is back up and running. We passed a continuing resolution bill, which is good news. The other thing, so I want to just see basically if we have any data that's coming out this week, what does it look like and when would it be coming out? And then we can dive into levels a little bit because I think we have a couple of like non-standard dates for when it actually is going to be coming out. For some reason though, my my Chrome doesn't want to operate, so we will come back to data whenever it actually does choose to load up. The other thing I wanted to look at real quick was actually like really, really, really zoom out on our ES because it's kind of hard to believe that today is November 17th. We're basically 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving. And I don't know about you guys, but usually as quarter four comes through, I kind of go a little bit more hands off on trading and just like I don't know, take Q4 a little bit slower because like volume usually drops pretty significantly, I would say, during it. And this is a little bit hard to see because this is in the way. And we're only halfway through our um Hey Raj, I did not finish my bagel. I haven't even had breakfast yet. I'm literally just trying to get some coffee down in me, and then I'll get breakfast before New York session opens. But I wanted to look at our monthly volume because usually as Q4 comes around, our monthly volume and open interest just tanks, right? And it leads to, I don't know, sometimes like really choppy, consolidating type conditions. And to be fair, in November, we've been relatively consolidated. But right now, our open demand is like almost as much as our volume, sorry, is almost as much as it was in September, August, July, and June. So October had a huge month of volume. It's kind of hard to see behind these little arrows. But we're basically up to the point of volume traded in the whole month of like every single month in the summer. And so we still have half a month left. Obviously, with Thanksgiving coming around, like the market will be closed Thursday, it'll probably be closed Friday. Like I probably won't be trading for the latter half of that week in general, but it's just incredible to see technically this much volume trading in the month of November. So I'm actually pretty excited to see um if we get high volume even as we approach December. So one thing I was just kind of thinking back on when I was journaling some trades um over the weekend, I was like, wow, like we've had some fantastic moves. And even on this fine morning, we have had some fantastic moves in ETH. Look at that. So we started with a yellow box open, pretty quickly broke out the top of yellow box, consolidated at that to upper level. Actually, last night in Ascend, Goose did take a long on ES and ended up hitting all five of his TPs. He got 30 points on ES, which was really, really impressive. Had this nice rejection up at 800 and pushed back into yellow box, saw a little bit of support at the top of yellow box, pushing right down below now, saw some support at the bottom of our average range and are continuing down. So this is really good confidence builder for me on this fine morning because the mechanics are working well. So I'm pretty excited to see what kind of levels we can find today to kind of push that thesis of our mechanics working well even better. All right, so let's hop into fractals. We're currently trading at 67.41 and a half. So let's go to our wave one daily. And the other thing I want to say about Goose's play last night that got him 30 points, it was actually a vector cluster play, which every morning in market prep, we obviously talk about the location of our vectors. Yesterday afternoon before ETH Open, Goose and I actually did a workshop with our Ascend members on how to trade vector cluster and how to find it and what the setups look like. And so it was really poetic that he was able to find a really nice vector cluster play and get 30 points off of it after that workshop. So that was really cool. Okay. So our daily wave one daily, we're making an L3 currently. So we've had 3 days of bearish activity on our wave one daily, which is actually pretty cool because on Friday we actually had a really strong move up after we had that really, really strong move down and just missed our bounce level. But we did still end up closing the day red. So that was technically an L2. So now we're currently forming an L3 and we're trading near our 20% odds. The one thing worth saying is that our Friday open state that formed was 6670.51. So we do technically have an open state all the way down at 6670. That's about 100 points away from where we're currently trading. Well, it's like 60, 70 points away from where we're currently trading. So if we have a bunch of other levels down there at 6670, we can mark that as an open state. But as of right now, there's nothing too convincing on the Wave 1 daily besides a potential open state here at 6720. Then we have another cluster of resistance at 6706 as well. The one thing we can also look at in our options analyzer is see our probabilities of making an L3 are not super low. So I think the way that or sorry, in our L3, they're not super low. So I'm not going to say like we're overextended on the Wave 1 daily or anything like that. So I would say really beyond this 20% odds level at like 6720, 6721. I don't really see too much on the Wave 1 daily. All right, so let's head into our 7 wave 60. 7 wave 60, we're showing the same story. So the vector on the wave 1 daily was, I believe, 6771. The 7 wave 60 is at 6772. And we do have this open state that we have currently formed at 6745, essentially. So we're going to ignore that one though, just because this is the open state that's being formed in the current wave that we're forming in, of course. The one thing I like seeing here is that the 7 wave 60 and the wave 1 daily are both making bearish waves. So price is trading below pivot and price is trading also below vector. So we're seeing consistency on our larger time frames regarding trend, which is nice to see. And that does give us potential confluence for wanting to trade a vector reject at some point during the day if we do reach up to this point. Um, we're trading well past our 50% odds on the 7 wave 60, and the next level that is kind of showing is the 6715, which is our 20% odds. We do technically have a double bottom here on the 7 wave 60 at 6693. There's an open state that we formed here, I believe, on Friday. And that's also in confluence with our 10% odds of continuation further. And so I do really like this 6694 level. The 6715 level, you could almost argue pairs a little bit with that 6721 level on the Wave 1 daily, but it's a little bit of a wide range. So right now, I think my eyes are looking at 6694 and 6715 to 6720. So let's go into some of our smaller time frames to see if there's any sort of confluences with any of these levels that we're seeing on the 7 wave 60 right now. But the one reason I do like this 6694 is it does get us down to the 10% odds paired with an open state, whereas like solely the 20% odds similar with the Wave 1 daily, I don't like that quite as much. I like the really, really low percentage probability of continuation. So it feels like it's a little bit of a ways down, but we'll see. So 20 wave 15, let's hop into. Okay, so we're seeing a pretty tight vector cluster, which is great. So the Wave 1 daily was, I believe, at 72. Let's just go back and look at that real quick. Oh, nope, it's at 6744. So that's actually much higher. But our 7 wave 60 was at 71, and our 20 wave 15 is at 68. So 68 to 71 isn't too bad of a cluster, actually. So the 20 wave 15 is currently trading at 6743. This is really interesting, though. Look at this. From this 20% odds and this open state that we've currently formed on the 20 wave 15, look at all this blank space we have all the way down to our 10% odds. So from 6743 all the way down to 6690, there's no resistance on our 20 wave 15. So this is pretty interesting because it invalidates, I think, a little bit our thesis of trying that 15 to 21 area, just because the 20 wave 15 isn't showing anything. But we are seeing that 10% odds and support and open state at the 6690. So far, that 6715 to 21 area doesn't look quite as good, and the 6690 area does look better because we're seeing that confluence on the 7 wave 60 and the 10 wave. I just don't really like how we don't have any resistance basically between 6743 and 6690. That's kind of crazy. That's a huge gap on the 20 wave. So, okay. So 6690 is looking pretty good. Look at the 10 wave 15. We have Again, look at this blank space on the 10-wave 15 from where we're basically currently trading 67.41. We have this current open state that we made in this current wave. But basically, from here, we have space all the way down to 702 and then 93. That's crazy. So we do have this open state here at 702.29, and then our 5% odds at 93. So it's actually pretty interesting though, because there's really no resistance between here and down, but we also don't really have that many clusters here. We have a cluster each at the 10, 5, 2, and 1% odds. But besides this open state that we, I think, created on Friday morning, we don't really have much opportunity beyond this 6702 or 6693. So I would say the 90s area is definitely looking better for us this morning. Let's go look at the 7-wave 5-minute. Here we go. Here's a little bit more resistance on our small time frames in the 7-wave 5-minute. Okay. So 6747 is our current vector location here. Wow, we're actually seeing a really nice tight vector, aren't we? 47. Okay, that's 67, 57. So it's actually a pretty big range, but that range is indicating that we're having a pretty strong downtrend, which our linear chart is showing that, of course. And the other thing worth noting here too is on most of our vector timeframes, uh, vector's been pretty respected so far. Like we haven't really had too many strong breaks above in this whole strong downtrend. So that's good to see for like confidence on wanting to potentially trade vector today. Okay, so looking at our levels though, the 7-wave 5-minute obviously doesn't have that same opportunity all the way extended down to like the 90s, just because this is a smaller time frame. We tend to see our waves and our extension a lot less than what we see on like a 7-wave 60 or a 20-wave 15, for example. But we are seeing some open states at 67.27 from this double bottom that was closed on Friday. Actually, this was this morning, early this morning. And then we do have another level down here at 6703. This open state has been open for a while. Let's actually go see when this one was actually created. So this was made on November 14th. So I believe that was also Friday morning. So that open state's been here for a minute on the 7-wave 5. So we do have that open state and 1% odds at 6703. So while that 90 level looks pretty good on the high time frames, it would definitely be a massive overextension on the 7-wave 5-minute. So if we do mark that 90 level, one of the things that I'll be very curious on is if we end up getting some type of retracement on the 7-wave 5-minute and the 50-wave 1-minute, that would get us above pivot to complete this bearish wave cycle. I'd be very curious to see that if we come back below pivot, what these updated values would be to the downside to see if there's any additional confluence in that 90s area. So right now, 703 is down there at the 1%. It's making our zone pretty big though. So we'll have to decide how we want to map our zone out, I think. So let's go look at our 50-wave 1-minute as well. Okay. Not surprised, right? 50-wave 1-minute is incredibly overextended to the downside. And look at that. We barely have any resistance on both the top side and the bottom side of this whole area. Let me load a few more days here to see if we get more clarity. Hmm. Wow, look at that. Oh, look at this though. Okay, so there's two things here. A little bit more resistance by looking at 4 days to load. We have an open state here at 67.37, which I'm not paying too much attention to because we just created this morning at like 6 a.m. We had this really brief retracement back up and above pivot. So this is exactly what I was talking about on the 7-wave 5-minute. This is a pretty cool visual. So I just said on the 7-wave 5-minute, I would like to see us retrace, come back up above pivot, make a really brief long wave, and then come back below for continuation down to see how our values changed. And you can see this on the 7-wave 5-minute now. Or sorry, this is the 50-wave 1-minute. So this is our really low time frame. But you see that we had this really brief retracement back up, made a really short term long wave, and then came pretty strong back down into a short wave. 2% odds are all the way up here at 67.40. But look at this. With 4 days to load, we do see an open state down here at 66.90, which is in confluence with a lot of our other larger time frames. And we don't have too much resistance to get down there. Now, are we going to have this completely huge measured move down in one fell swoop? Maybe, probably not. Who knows, right? We don't estimate, we react. But I do like seeing that there is an open state here at 66.90 from what was created um, on Friday. So let's just go back real quick because our 7-wave 60 showed 6694. 20 wave 15 showed 6690. 10 wave 15 showed 6692 and 702. So that gives us currently a 12-point range if we want to include the 702. 6690 to 702. And then we have 703 on our 7 wave 5. So that's now currently a 13-point zone, which is huge. And then our 50 wave 1, if we go all the way down, we have this open state, 4 days to load at 90. So technically, our zone right now is 90 to 703, which is pretty big. Let's go look at the wave 1 daily. What I will say though is the most density that we're seeing is in that 90 to 92 area. So I think what I'm going to do is build a zone down here from 90. So we're going to do 90 to 703 just so we can recognize our full zone, even though it's going to look kind of silly because it's so big. But let's do 90 to 703. But what I really want to do is this 90 to 92 area is going to be like our golden zone of really wanting to take this play because the vast majority of our density of open states and low percentage probability of continuation is all the way down here. So I'm just going to make this this like a yellow zone here, just a little bit more opaque. Um, because if you have like a huge risk tolerance, right? I think you could tap some of those earlier zones up here, but I think if we want to go for like a full size, high probability of reversion play, 92 to 90 is what we're looking at. The one thing I do want to say though too, right, guys, is like we're barely trading below the bottom of our average range. So this is a pretty significant extension past our max range to get to this 90 area. So one thing that we could potentially look at is potential vector rejections to come back down. And when we do look back at our vector, we did kind of notice that it was in a pretty big range, right? Anywhere from 67.40. Let me just go double check what we're trading. So we're currently trading at 67.46. So we're anywhere from 67.40 on the wave 1 daily to 70. We have 65, so 65.75, 55. So 55, 50 to 70 essentially. This is at 49 and this is at 45. So we have a big vector cluster right now. That 7 wave 60 is really, really high, I would say. So if we do take the 7 wave 60 out of the mix, right, this one is 67.70. We have a vector cluster from 45.75, 49. So 46 to 49, let's say, 55 and 65. So even if we do 45 to 65, that's a really, really big vector cluster because we're having such a strong trend. But our vector cluster, if you would mark that out on a linear chart, is very large. It's literally like here to here. Look at how big that is. So this is a really difficult play like to probably want to try to read off of just because again your risk here is pretty quite large. Um I think if you wanted to try to do a vector cluster play as we kind of continue this trend down, one of the things I would really consider is an additional confluence, right? So like if you wanted to look at like the bottom of yellow box, for example, or as we were maybe moving back up through vector cluster, if we saw some sort of additional resistance on like an additional like strategy that you guys have, I think that would make sense. So like for example, right, we technically would have an additional confluence with the top of our average or the bottom of our average range here. There would be a confluence with the top of yellow box. So that could be something you would look at, but I think again, um, this would be like a little bit difficult to play this as is because it's just so big and we're even ignoring the wave 1 daily vector. Hey genius, you're learn want to learn how to do vector charting. So actually yesterday, but right before ETH Open, we did have a workshop on how to chart and trade vector cluster. I'm editing that just a little bit and I will post it on our YouTube for everybody to be able to watch. And so I will make sure to tag all of our members in Ascend, like the general chat, to tag everybody to let them know when that posts up. But that will be on this YouTube channel. So if you're following the YouTube channel, then you will have it. And please feel free to ask any questions in that. But yeah, the one thing I do want to say, right, and I say it every day, guys, our vector cluster. This vector cluster is such a dynamic zone that just because we have it marked here, once New York session opens, vector is going to revise, right? And as price moves, vector continually revises. And so the reason we look at vector cluster when we do morning market prep is that if there's like a really tight group or some really nice confluence that we kind of want to trade within the next 20 minutes, we would do it. But really what I like to do is like whenever I do mark vector cluster is I try to make the box really small. So then as we go throughout the day, I can just like drag it around to where the current vector actually is. So that's one thing to note. Like if you guys do chart vector cluster and then don't trade with fractals for the rest of the day, I would say here in the next 20 minutes, I would totally ignore that vector cluster location because it is so dynamic. So all right, guys, we have a pretty big zone here, but I do really like this golden zone down from 92.50 to like 90. If we get down there, I will definitely be longing. But otherwise, I think I'm looking a little bit at shorts just because we've kind of created this short bias, but we have traded a really nice range during ETH. So I think we should have some continued really, really nice price action. But otherwise, guys, that's all I have for you on ES. Happy Monday. Everybody, please trade safe and practice good risk management. And we will talk to you on YouTube tomorrow morning, same time. See you guys.